What's going on, y'all? I'm Brandon Goggins. Welcome back to another episode of the Clippers Latest, where we talk all things LA Clippers, quick, fast, and to the point. How we doing today? I hope that everybody's having a fantastic day. I hope that today has been amazing at whatever time you may be viewing this video. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty good. I got my back taken care of. We're feeling a little better from the other day. I'm just feeling overall pretty positive, and that pretty much tracks with the theme of today's episode. It's going to be a lot of positivity that we're talking about today. No negativity, at least for now. At least for now. But like I said, today is going to be a pretty positive episode for today, and we're going to start off by talking about, once again, our star point guard. Well, one of them, and that's James Harden. James Harden celebrated his birthday the other day, August 26th to be exact, and the beard is 36 today, contributing to that age average once again. Just keep on climbing up the board. But hey, let's embrace it. James Harden, he came into the league around 2009, third overall pick in that draft, and he made his mark on the NBA, going from the Thunder, making his impact there, then going to do his own thing in Houston. And that's where he became the man, the beard, that we know and love today. And then, he took a quick trip over to Brooklyn, then to Philly, and now he is with the LA Clippers. But I want to take a trip down memory lane in a sense and look at how James Harden's career matches up against some Hall of Famers. Because some things might surprise you. James Harden, I would say, would be, by the time that he retires eventually, one of the best players to never win a ring. But that's gonna change this year, so I can't even say that. We're gonna have a ring by the end of this year, so we're not even going to speak that into existence. Positive vibes only, like I said. But yeah, let's take a look at some of these things. We're gonna unlock a career that stacks up beautifully against some of the most notable names in the sports history. But let's get it started. He scored more total points than Hakeem Olajuwon of the Houston Rockets. Two Rockets legends. That's pretty cool. He's served up more total assists than Tony Parker, Spurs legendary point guard. But that goes back to me saying that James Harden is more than a scorer. He is a playmaker as well. He can do both, which makes him so dominant. I'm just telling you guys, I see a vision. Stay with me. He's hit more three-pointers than Ray Allen, who up until a few years ago was the leading scorer all time with three-pointers made. Steph Curry passed him, and then not long after, James Harden was right behind him. James Harden is a very good three-point shooter and has been through his whole career. Obviously not at the same magnitude as Steph. Maybe not even as much as Ray Allen. It may be a thing of longevity, but you're not up there for no reason. You know what I'm saying? There are plenty of people that have been in the league for 16 years and have not gotten up to that. So you're only going to do that if you're pretty good at shooting threes. So I think that that's pretty impressive. He's had more triple doubles than Giannis, which, you may expect because he gets a lot of assists. But rebounds are also a part of a triple double. Giannis is 6'11". James Harden is 6'6" on a good day. I'm being generous. On a good day. So the fact that he was able to grab all those boards on those seasons that he was averaging almost a triple double, to be able to maintain that through an 82 game season, come on, y'all, come on. And then he's had more 50-point games than LeBron James, which LeBron is the all-time leading scorer ever in all aspects. And that's a testament to LeBron. He doesn't have as many 50-point games as you may think, but it's still insane to think about it that, like, James Harden has more 50-point games than the all-time leading scorer. And then this is one that I don't know if you guys knew, but he has more 60-point games than Michael Jordan, who I know a lot of people consider the greatest player of all time. And Michael Jordan has, I want to say, I don't know. I don't want to speak on things that I don't know for sure, but I know that he has several scoring titles, and a lot of 60-point games came from that. But James Harden has more. and not more scoring titles, but definitely more 60-point games. And I think that's very impressive. And I think that just looking at that at the grand scheme of things really just shows you what type of player James Harden is. And I don't think people will remember. I don't think people will realize like how good of a player he was until he's gone. He unfortunately right now people think that he's just going to be this guy that never won a ring. This, Hall of Very Good. I don't know if some people considered him to be a Hall of Famer because he doesn't have that championship. But I think, given everything that I just said, plus he, I don't know. I think that he's a Hall of Famer guaranteed. I think that there are a lot of other factors besides the ones that I've already listed that he's contributed to allow him to have that type of resume. I mean, last season he dominated in ISO points per game. He had 9 points per game, which was 1.5 more than the next most with 7.5, I think, from Shea. And y'all know how Shea was getting down last season. And the fact that Harden was not only up there with him, but above him, I feel like speaks a lot. He was also above Jason Tatum, who was very good in ISO game. Kyrie Irving, who a lot of people consider the best ball handler of all time. And then Kevin Durant. Dude, everybody knows that if you get stuck with KD in the ISO, you are in trouble. More than him. I think that things like that need to be considered and really digested because I don't think people understand the gravity of that. But nonetheless, he's still a legend regardless. Happy birthday or belated birthday to the Beard. He's still writing his legacy, and he's going to add champion to the end of his resume by the time this season is said and done. So, happy birthday to the Beard. And we're gonna keep on, celebrating because I think this past week has been full of celebrations. Bradley Beal got married this weekend or over the past weekend. He and his wife, Kamaya Adams, they hosted a lavish wedding celebration. And this marked their 10-year anniversary after they had like a, watered down version of their ceremony in 2020. And of course that was due to COVID, but, he brought the people out, he brought out NBA stars like Jason Tatum, who Beal actually used to be a babysitter for when, Tatum was a toddler. And, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which I'll get to that in a second, but they were both groomsmen, which was an interesting dynamic because if you don't remember, the Celtics and the Magic played in the playoffs this past season, and I don't think that Tatum and KCP were necessarily the best of friends during that playoff series, but then again, it's basketball. I don't expect you to be friends with your actual friends on the court, but, if they weren't cool, shout out to Brad Beal for bringing those two together and, celebrating him. We also saw a few of Beal's former teammates, like Suns' former teammate Kevin Durant. Obviously they're both not on the Suns anymore, so I'm sure that they, celebrated that. And a couple of his former Wizards teammates, like Garrett Temple was there, and John Wall, who was actually a Clipper the last time he played before announcing his retirement last week. Shout out to John Wall. He and Bradley Beal were the only reason why Washington was relevant in the 2010s. So shout out to them. I'm glad to see that they're still kicking it, still have their bond. But overall, just congratulations to Bradley Beal and Kamaya Adams Beal. Maybe this will inspire him. What did I say in a few episodes ago that he said that he joined the Clippers for? I need a ring. I need a ring. And that's what he got. You know what I'm saying? He got the ring. This is his first ring that he's going to win this season. The second one is coming in 2026, about around June-ish, mid-June. I think that he's going to get his second ring. Yeah, that's just what my conscience is telling me. I don't know. I don't know anything, but I think that he wants his ring. If you're wondering why I keep on saying I need a ring like this, just search up Mark Phillips, Kyrie Irving, LeBron. Give me a ring. Then you'll understand it all. But speaking of people that already have a ring and who have already proved themselves, let's talk about Kawhi Leonard. He was sitting courtside at some type of game and somebody came up and was talking to him, and he said that whenever he says wet ball, he knows it's going in. So I wanted to talk about 4 instances where I feel like Kawhi said wet ball, you know, um, throughout his career. Obviously, there are way more than 4, but if we went over every instance where I feel like he said wet ball, we'd be here for a long time, longer than we need to be. So I kept it down to just 4, but let's go over the 4 and see what we got here. So the first, I would have to say his all-out surge from the 2017 playoffs against Memphis. He averaged over 31 points per game in that series, and I know what y'all may be thinking. Memphis wasn't even on that. Memphis wasn't even like good for real. That was the last of the grit and grind era. Gasol was still on the team. Randolph, Mike Conley, TA, they were all still there. So it wasn't like a dog, like what I'm saying, a walk in the park. It was a dog fight. The Grizzlies were super tough before they ended things off, but Kawhi was just different back then, yo. I don't think I feel like people forget how good the 2017 or 2016-17 Spurs were. Like, they won 65 games, and they would have been the best team in the league if arguably the greatest team of all time didn't exist in the same season, where they scored 173 games. The Spurs were very good that season too, and they almost beat the Warriors in that same postseason run. Credit to Kawhi Leonard, who unfortunately got injured. Zaza Pachulia, I still despise you for that, and I think that you are not a good person. And that is about as nice in PR as I can get it, for the sake of this video. But moving on, I'd say that the next two, are some Clipper moments because I had to, but the buzzer beater that he had versus the Kings in March of this year, he had like a float style type buzzer beater, and it bounced around and then fell in at the last second, which is a little bit of foreshadowing to what I'm about to talk about in 2 more points. But that was crazy. I saw a comment that said, why is buzzer beaters always bouncing around? It may have not been a quote unquote wet ball moment, but it was a game winner and it was important. So I included it in this list. Speaking of staying on this season, I would have to include the mid-range pull-up dagger for the Clippers win over the Nuggets in the playoffs. Even though we didn't win that series, that's not important. Excuse me. Kawhi, that game, I believe it was game 2. That was one of the best Kawhi Leonard games I've ever seen. Like, ever. I was like, dude, what are you on? Like, what, bro? Bro, he couldn't miss. He went for 39 points. And I know that might sound like, oh, people go for 40 every day. Well, Kawhi doesn't. Especially coming off of the injuries that he was coming off of. It wasn't necessarily expected. But he delivered. 15 for 19 shooting. The brother missed 4 shots and scored 39. I'm saying 40. You're going to hear me doing this all season. I'm going to round up. He had 40. He missed 4 shots. Let it sink in. Shout out Gunna. But nah. Shout out to the Claw for that one. Like I said, although they went on to lose that series, that was one of the best Kawhi Leonard performances I've ever seen. And then, of course, the number 1 spot has to go to the bounce buzzer beater against the 76ers in Game 7 of the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals. I think, or not Eastern Conference Finals, Eastern Conference semifinals. Because we know about the Sixers and never mind. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it in the second round. But obviously, he curled around to the corner, dribbling around, fade away in the corner, sitting there like this. Everybody, all in awe in unison. Boom, boom, boom. Goes through. Wet ball. Come on now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like everybody, well, I don't know if everybody remembers where they were at the moment that happened, but shoot, I remember watching it, and I remember how big of a thing it was, because obviously the Sixers were at their peak, so to speak, during that season. A lot of things started going wrong after that season. So they thought that they had a shot, but Kawhi killed those dreams and sent Joel Embiid home crying. No offense to Joel, but he was crying. And that was due to Kawhi Leonard just being amazing. uh, Obviously, that was during his short tenure with not the Clippers, with the Raptors. He really just went in Toronto, stood on business, and then just dipped. That's kind of crazy, but I mean, you gotta give it to him. I respect it. Shout out my boy Kawhi. But a lot of these moments, he was shooting that ball, you know what I'm saying, getting active, doing what he needed to do to, continue his legacy. So let's talk about somebody else that has continued their legacy in a smaller scale, but still very notable, especially in relation to this upcoming season. And of course, I'm talking about Brook Lopez. Look, Brook Lopez was a dog in Brooklyn. I don't know if a lot of people remember because the Nets sucked, but he was very elite. He was one of the best big men in the game. But obviously that couldn't last forever, and he didn't want to stay in Brooklyn forever. I mean, shoot, who would? Let's be real. Who would want to stay in Brooklyn forever? So he didn't. But he was obviously getting a little older. He gets traded to the Bucks, and he has to adjust to a new role. He's no longer the primary guy. He's not even the secondary guy. But he adjusted and adapted very well, and it's very impressive. I always am going to applaud somebody that can evolve their game. I think that that's the most impressive thing that you can do, going from a specific era of basketball and adapting to the new style, and trying to figure out how you can be successful in that. And I feel like Lopez has done a really good job in doing that. Like I said, he started up as a post scorer in Brooklyn. Obviously, that was during the era where big men were still, supposed to be the in the dunk spot, on the post, on the block, doing all this post scoring stuff. But then he shifted to a prolific 3-point shooter and defensive anchor in Milwaukee, leading the league in blocks a couple seasons. He was in the running for DPOY. And I feel like that transformation really extended his career and value because, after his Brooklyn tenure, we weren't really sure what to expect from him. But because he was able to change up his game and stay consistent in doing that, he was able to, extend his value. And while he'll likely be a backup big with the Clippers, I think that just having that versatility at the 5 spot and having that in the rotation makes this team so lethal and more dynamic. It just really adds to the depth overall. I think that I've already talked enough about lineups the last 2 episodes, but I think that there can be a lot of lineups in which he'll work for. Obviously, he's not the fastest on the court, so I don't know how much the double big lineup will come into effect, but definitely when we play teams that are, closer in size to us, we may need that with, a little bit of high-low action from him to Zuby down low. Or, it could be the roles reversed. I don't know what Zuby's been doing with his shot. I don't think it's on the same level as Brook Lopez's, but, one can only hope. But I'm excited to see how he fits in with the Clippers system. I'm really excited to see these preseason games, just get a feel for what we're looking like and how people can adjust to their new positions. I'm just excited to see it all. But you let me know your thoughts on that, how you think he'll be able to fit in. Tell me if I missed anything on the Kawhi wet ball moments. Tell me your thoughts on Bradley Beal's wedding, if you have any. Congratulations to him again. Tatum got some new cornrows that he debuted at the wedding, so let me know if you have any thoughts about that. And again, happy birthday, belated birthday to James Harden, the Beard, a legend in the making. And that's all that's gonna have to do. That's all we got to do for this episode. We're gonna be back tomorrow with another banger, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. I hope that you guys have a good day. Peace. Y'all be easy.